So, Prager University put out a video with 4 new arguments for God. I'm always interested in seeing new arguments, so let's see what creative things they've got for us now.
You know, for 27 years, I was an atheist. I thought anyone who believed in a God or gods was, well, stupid, or uneducated, naive, gullible, or just into the gig for money, sex, and power. I mean, after all, everyone knows that religion is just a psychological crutch for intellectual weaklings, right?
No, not everybody knows that. If that was a widespread belief, then the majority of people in the world would not be believers. Everyone knows that their beliefs are right, otherwise they wouldn't believe them. That's why I like to use evidence to guide my understanding of the world. What I think could be wrong, but it's less likely to be wrong if there's evidence to support it.
So, what changed my mind? Well, look, I tell the whole story in my book, Shattered, but for our purposes here on Prager University, I was simply challenged by my Christian teammates on the Cincinnati Reds to read some religious books, critique them, and then share with the guys where the authors were wrong and why atheism is the only real and true outlook for anyone not deceived by fantasy, fiction, or mythology.
Well, that's what I do here. I find many challenges and claims by theists, and I try to answer them as best I can. Still haven't had my mind changed. Yet. I mean, it's still possible.
I set out to disprove theism, which I didn't think would take very long.
Well, you can't really disprove God existing. It's an attempt to say that something unprovable does not exist. You can argue against the validity of the arguments, something I do on a weekly basis these days, but you cannot prove a negative.
But I ran into some difficulties along the way. Difficulties like Aristotle, Augustine, Aquinas. I mean, in simple terms, I was confronted with the awareness that there are really 4 big bangs that have to be accounted for, not just one. I had never really even considered that before.
You never considered that before? Well, that's probably because that claim doesn't make any sense. The Big Bang is the name given to the expansion of the universe.
I mean, we're all familiar with the first Big Bang, right? It's usually the answer given to the question, why is there something rather than nothing? It's the idea that there was nothing, it popped, and boom, there's something. I mean, that time, matter, and space all came into existence in some great cosmological flash about 16 billion years ago.
No, not exactly. As near as we can understand, the sum total of the mass and energy of the universe was compressed into a single singularity. For some reason, several billion years ago, it rapidly expanded. Scientists have been able to trace the expansion of our universe back to the first few fractions of a second. We know that it occurred. How or why it occurred, we still don't know how that happened, but that does not say it didn't. For example, if a rock hits you in the face, even if you don't know how it accelerated or where it came from, that doesn't mean you weren't just hit. Now, since we don't have any evidence for God, apart from many, many contradicting claims, there is no reason to state that something we don't have evidence for was that starting cause.
Astrophysicists tell us that this first Big Bang yielded only a handful of fundamental elements, and that it would take billions and billions of years for the nuclear furnaces of trillions of stars to yield the 118 elements in the periodic table.
Yes, and? Is that supposed to be an argument? That's basic nuclear physics. At the beginning, the universe was composed of simple elements, mostly hydrogen. These simple elements would eventually gather together due to gravity. When enough of them would come in close enough proximity to each other, on the order of billions and billions, the gravity would compress them into a star. The nuclear furnace of stars turns the basic elements into heavier ones. Once those stars go supernova, they spread their heavier elements out across the universe, so everything, including us, is made of star stuff. I really don't see how this is an argument for you at all.
The first theoretical cosmological Big Bang, well, it only yields matter and energy. It doesn't even begin to address the origin of life. So, how do you get life from non-life? How did abiogenesis occur? I mean, the notion that something can come from nothing. Where's the evidence? Well, you're going to need another something from nothing leap of faith, some kind of biological second Big Bang.
Even though we don't have witnesses to that event, we've worked out how it could have happened. We may be way off on how we think life began, but the fact is, an intelligent creator was not needed to start the process of self-replicating molecules. If we have an issue, in this case where life began, And there is one answer that explains everything utilizing the evidence we have and is not disproved by any other evidence, and another answer that relies on something we have no evidence for. The first answer is the more likely one. I'm not saying it's 100% proven to be the correct answer, just that this is the best answer we have, until new evidence arrives to expand our understanding of events.
For all the mind-blowing advancements we've made in physics, biology, and chemistry in just the past 100 years, we're still no closer to making it happen. We don't have a clue.
Yes we do. We've been able to create replicating RNA in a lab. That's what is needed for life, basic compounds that have the ability to replicate themselves.
The closer we look, the wider the chasm. I mean, sure, we've learned a lot about how to manipulate life forms, how to add and subtract DNA material, even map the human genome, but we have no idea how to literally create life from dead stuff.
No, the more we learn, the more refined our understanding about how abiogenesis most likely occurred becomes. Better and better evidence that we've observed and worked out has yielded better and better understanding.
Now look, at this point, we still only have physics, chemistry, and some basic biology, or matter, energy, and simple life, if you will. But we still don't have a way to account for the great diversity of life forms. I mean, the huge differences between bacteria, plants, and animals.
Look, 1 billion years is quite a long time. A small change in every generation, coupled with the fact that beneficial changes are kept and harmful or limiting changes are discarded through the filter of natural selection, means that eventually huge and diverse changes can occur in living things. I'm going to be honest here. I get where he's coming from. I questioned evolution. I didn't just blindly accept that it was true. And one of the questions I had was similar to this. How could so much diversity come about from such small changes? I had to be shown how rapidly those changes occur, get passed on through a group of organisms, and what a cruel examinatrix Mother Nature can be to the less fit of the species. Red in tooth and claw indeed. Additionally, I had to wrap my head around how long billions of years actually are, but I had questions, so I looked to find the answers. Plants and animals are indeed quite different, but their origins do have the same basic start. An organism needs to get energy to thrive. The pre-plant organisms developed a way to get the energy they need from sources that are readily available, the sun and the soil. They grew, thrived, and adapted to those sources. The pre-animal organisms were able to get their energy from those plants, which were now in abundance.
We're going to need a kind of anthropological third Big Bang to account for all this, which of course is what Darwin was after in his Descent of Man thesis. Now look, Darwin answered a lot of questions, but he could never answer the core question. How did evolution begin?
Evolution occurred the first time a self-replicating molecule replicated in a way that was slightly different from its originator. Whether that was a beneficial change that helped the new creature survive, or a detrimental one that kept it from surviving, that was the first time evolution happened.
A final Big Bang is going to be required to explain how a mechanistic animal brain can become a self-reflective human mind.
So, why did we evolve intelligence? I've mentioned it in other videos, but frankly, we're not the most physically adept creatures out there. Okay, I don't mean just me, but that's a good example. I mean humans. When our ancestors left the trees for the plains, we either had to adapt or die. We were able to become simple tool users, well enough to protect ourselves and survive, and we nurtured that ability. The better tool users were able to thrive at the expense of the less developed ones, creating things like agriculture. We had to become intelligent to survive, and the thing about intelligence is that once you get it, it starts growing rather quickly.
Even the lowest life forms have brains and central nervous systems.
No. A brain by definition is a cluster of cells. A nervous system is a system of cells, neither of which can be found in a single-celled creature. Receptors and membranes may cause reactions in single-celled organisms, but that is no way a brain or central nervous system.
I mean, how does something like that become the mind of a Michelangelo, a Shakespeare, a Beethoven?
Our appreciation for art has evolved along with us. We would make representations of life and the world we see around us. These representations over time became more sophisticated. We were also able to work out what images and sounds produced an emotional reaction in our fellow humans. Like our tools used to shape the natural world, our tools used to mimic the natural world and shape emotions of our fellow humans also got better and better. Eventually, talented individuals were able to create great works of art, music, and other cultural milestones.
Lomax told whoever he's talking to not to kill us if he's around, right?
Yeah, but Lomax is dead. He's not around anybody anymore.
I know that. You know that. Nobody else knows that. Huh?
How do you account for free will and introspection, let alone man's pressing existential drive to ask why?
The more they understood the world and how to change things to suit themselves better, the better things became for our ancestors. Eventually, they hit the point where mere survival was a simple enough concept and did not have to spend all their time working just to get from one day to the next. They had the free time to expand their minds, even more with the intelligence they had developed, to start questioning abstract ideas about the world, try to figure out why things happen, rather than just how to deal with them.
And again, you must understand these problems require bangs. Sudden binary pops into existence, since there's no evidence for any gradual development in any of these.
Well, for the Big Bang, the sum total of matter did expand suddenly for some reason, but the others? The numerous chemical reactions eventually produced one that started life. I wouldn't call that suddenly popping into existence. At one point, molecules started self-replicating, but that is the result of many chemical reactions over time. Evolution is by definition a long, gradual process, the opposite of popping into existence. And our ability to wax philosophical about the world and our place in it, that came about over a long period of time, using our intelligence we developed for other things, like survival.
So I, like you, have a choice. It's either faith in these 4 big bangs of somethings from nothings to account for what we see all around us.
Well, since all 4 of your arguments have shown to have happened, have been worked out to understand how they could have happened, shown to have happened and are still happening, or can be explained by our development, it does not take faith to say they occurred, only a basic understanding of the natural world.
Or faith in some kind of creator God behind it all.
Since there's no evidence for this creator God, there's no reason to believe in it. Once you have shown there's evidence for God, then you can start to make your case for it being the originator of everything.
So, next time someone asks you, hey, what about the Big Bang? Make sure you ask them, which one? The cosmological, biological, anthropological, or psychological?
Again, there was only one Big Bang. The other 3 were not Big Bangs in any way. It would be the same as saying humanity travels everywhere by boat. Going across water takes a water boat. To fly, you get in a skyboat. Walking uses your leg boats. It's giving a definition to things that do not deserve it. Just because you don't understand one thing, the Big Bang, doesn't mean it's the same as everything else you don't understand. The one real and other 3 not Big Bangs are only things you do not understand and seems to have not tried to understand. A major downfall to this is you seem to believe that the answers to the origins of the universe and to us are science or God. But that's not really the case. The only way we can get meaningful answers is to understand that all things, including our origins, are answered by things we have evidence for or things we don't. And answers we don't have evidence for should be dismissed. Evidence should be the deciding factor, and we simply don't have any evidence for any kind of supernatural creator. You brought up questions, which is good, but you failed to give any reason why those questions should lead to a belief in God. As for the title, your 4 new arguments for God, each of them can be boiled down to we don't know, therefore God, which is really only one argument, and not really new in any kind of sense, and easily debunkable. If anybody out there finds any decent arguments they think I would enjoy going over, please send them my way.